Are we all present and accounted for? Thank you, Katlego, for inspiring the masses. Inspirational as always. We've got a 2-day board meeting coming up, so we're going to need some motivation there as well. The final session, after lunch. So what are we going to do? This is participatory, unfortunately, so hopefully you're all awake. I'm going to hand over now to Charity Monorang, who had an interesting journey, ending up working in the drug policy division at TB-HIV Care. She was being supervised by Dr. Simon Howell in her PhD, who said, I think this young woman has potential. So I spoke to her and I said, yeah, we've got this opportunity coming up. And a month later I spoke to her and said, we've got this opportunity coming up. And then I think we had frozen yogurt one day where I told her, I'm bribing you to please wait until this opportunity comes up. And I think it was 6 months. 6 months later. Tara is also familiar with that story. She was turning down jobs for about 6 months before she came to TB-HIV Care. But I'm very grateful that they both did come along. And Charity has recently been appointed as the Executive Director of Students for Sensible Drug Policy, which is awesome. And she's just returned from the plenary meeting of the Eastern Southern African Commission on Drugs, which is amazing, because not many people get to go to those meetings. So, look, she's not the only amazing one. I don't want her head to get too big. You know, there are lots of other people in this room that are amazing and have achieved amazing things. But Charity, well done on that achievement. And I'm going to get her to tell you a little bit about something which I knew nothing about until a few minutes ago. So, anyway, thank you. And hopefully this feeds into the process.
Thank you so much, Sean. So we're going to get into a very participatory session. We didn't want to make the closing so ordinary. So we're going to have individuals participate and kind of give or feed into a project that we need to feed into the Commission on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. So in 2022, last year, October, the UN Commission on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights decided to initiate work on a new general comment on the impact of drug policy on social, economic, and cultural rights. And so, considering the CESCR, I'm going to be using this abbreviation very much because it is a long name. So considering their initiative on a new general comment, a group of organizations, including HRI, TB-HIV Care, SANPUD, Input, Harm Reduction, Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights, IDPC, and a few other organizations came together to develop a consortium which was going to come up with activities to get participation or responses from civil society across the region and other regions as well to kind of get an idea of what impacts has drug policy had on these economic, social, and cultural rights, and to feed into the general comment. So the Commission meets every now and then, every 5 years, and they usually do assessments to kind of gauge where countries are at regarding human rights violations. And so this year they wanted to look at the impact of drug policies on human rights. And so the issues that should be, or issues that may be covered, include the following. And this will be very important because the idea is to get where everyone is at around these issues, and so we'll call up certain individuals to come up. You're going to say your name, and you're going to tell us what you would say to the Commission if you had the opportunity to speak to the Commission on the impacts of drug policies. And I think we can all agree and we all have an idea of what we would like to say to them. And so the issues or topics that can be covered or relevant are non-discrimination and equality, participation, consultation, and transparency, right to social security, the right to an adequate standard of living, the right to and at work, the right to housing, the right to health, the right to education, the protection of cultural practices involving controlled substances, and thematic issues such as drug control and environmental justice, the right to safe and healthy environment, the impact of drug policy on women, children, and people discriminated against based on their sexual orientation or gender identity, international cooperation in drug control, and responsibilities of non-state actors, drug policies and the realization of the SDGs, the impact of drug law enforcement and drug-related detention on economic, social, and cultural rights, state obligations to protect economic, social, and cultural rights, where drug markets have been regulated, the role of community-led networks in the realization of economic, social, and cultural rights of people who use drugs. So it's a very broad area, and I think I see people nodding, so I'm hoping that your interventions will be very relevant to these topics. And so I'm going to facilitate the session where I think, Sean, you mentioned that people have stickers.
So if you look,
Yes.
look behind your chair, you might have a sticker there. If you've got really want to make a comment, you're more than welcome to. But here are the rules, okay? There's some rules, and these are going to be strictly enforced. A maximum of a minute, maximum, to say two things. Okay?
Okay, so
1 minute
we're being Oprah and yes.
to say two things.
Yes.
And that is, what would you say to this committee? What would you say to them? And what, if anything, are you taking away with you from this event?
Okay.
And that might be good or bad. We've got thick skins.
Mm-hmm.
So who's got a sticker? Who's coming first? Who's volunteering first?
Yes. So firstly, your name, what you would say to the committee, and what you're taking from
Must say your name.
Drug Policy Week. So
Because-
where's the spot?
So this is creating a montage as well.
Yeah.
Nice video montage.
Yes. Where's
I
the
win my bet. If you come first, I win my bet. I'm joking, Myrtle. Come. Come first.
Come first.
Come.
You have to come to the front. So I will be timing, because we're very strict with time. So yes, 1 minute to say two things. What you would say to the committee, and what you're taking from Drug Policy Week. So first your name, organization, and what you'd say to the committee, and what you're taking from Drug Policy Week.
Okay. Myrtle Clark, Fields of Green for All, cannabis re-legalization non-profit company based in South Africa. What I would say to the Commission was that the traditional, cultural and religious use of cannabis is something that's very close to our hearts in Southern Africa, having had over 700 years of this type of use of this plant, and that the re-legalization of cannabis in our area will most certainly contribute positively to the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. What I have got from this conference is most certainly the fact that cannabis is a drug, and that I identify as a drug user, and that I identify very strongly with the challenges that we share with the rest of the people in the drug policy community. And thank you very much for sharing this time with us.
Okay, I'm going to start lining people up. Who's next? Here we go. Here Moses.
Thank you.
Halala African Police Week, halala. Halala African Drug Police Week, halala. No, thank you so much, comrades. It's quite clear that we are all here to serve for the greater cause. My name is Moses. Kama from Sohang Youth Project and the chairperson of the Ekurhuleni Local Drug Action Committee and serving as a provincial deputy chairperson in Gauteng as well. Firstly, we like to thank the organizers, Miss Angel, Sean, and everyone for ensuring that the key people who are reflecting on the National Drug Master Plan are here. Because that was, give yourself a round of applause. I think that was a right move so that we can be able in terms of educating. And I know through the past week, we're able to gain a lot and make in terms of more inputs. That's why it's very important to ensure that this does not just end here, but we need more. I emphasize that point that I've alluded to, the issues of reaching out, because the more people are empowered, the more we reach people, the more we send information, the more people they get liberated, because the only way you can be able to reach to them and is when you empower them, have more trainings, have more sessions, and yeah, those are some of the things that we must ensure that we add in terms of more resources so that we can be able to reach out to as many people as we can. So yeah, basically in a nutshell, not forgetting our chairperson Mamunandi, who's the Central Drug Authority Board. Let's give a round of applause. Thank you. It's not often that you'll find leaders that will ensure, Angel, that they conclude with the program. So we thank you for your time. For that shows the commitment of Central Drug Authority. And as Singabantwana, be Central Drug Authority, it says a lot about your leadership. So on that note, big up and Tatekuna. Let us ensure that we reach out to as many communities on the round. Angel and the team, they've proven that they can do this thing. So big up. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're very, very serious about time. I know we're very passionate.
I've now got a timer here. I'm going to press it.
Yeah, so please
Thank you.
stick to the 1 minute so that everyone gets a chance to speak. Katleho, please, 1 minute.
Well, here we go, timer.
My name is Katleho Rasibite. I am at the National Sexual Leadership within the AIDS Council, and I'm going to be the new the president once PWIT is being a sector. What I will say to the commission is to say we need to do proper consultation, because what I've picked up throughout the week of this conference, we've seen minds where like drug usage has been so demonized in a manner that communities amongst themselves, they do not understand. So this is also what I said earlier on, that we should find an alignment that how, therefore now we take the country's NSP and we align it with the incoming NSP that we are going to develop, that is going to also speak into HIV, STI, and TB, and make sure it's it's owned by the people for the people. And as we're going to say, leave no one behind. My 1 minute is finished. Thank you so much, ladies. Please clap for me.
Well done. That was exactly 55 seconds. Okay, who's next? Siobhan.
Hello, I'm Siobhan Cassidy. I'm from calloffthesearch.com. What I would tell the Commission is that current drug policy has divided society, isolating the most vulnerable and terrifying everyone else. And what I think I'm taking away from this conference is how important it is to get the message from out of this silo, which it sometimes seems, and to the general public, to the media, to bridge the divide between people and these communities.
Thank you. Next person. Yes.
Hi, everyone. I was thinking around this issue, and I think what comes to mind is we are beginning to see... okay, my name is Maria Goretti from IDPC. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. There's a growing number of countries that are beginning to look at legal regulation of cannabis. And to me, what I would be telling the Commission is that there's need for us to begin to consider the indigenous people who have been growing these crops. How do we include them in this legitimate market that we are creating so that they also benefit? Because over years, they have been criminalized, they have been considered illegal in terms of the activities. How can the Commission, through its work, include these indigenous people to benefit from these legitimate markets that are being created for cannabis? Thank you.
Here we go. We can actually form a queue here.
Yes.
That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
So if you've got a stick in that, you can start queuing here, and then we can just go one after the other. And then that way we will be home in time for dinner.
Hello everyone, I'm Matapelo Rapilwana and I'm a paralegal at NACOSA. So in NACOSA we are a group of attorneys that recently joined, and I support the Pivot program. What I would say to this commission is, don't forget minors. I think we talk a lot, but then in some way we always exclude the minor, and we always forget that minor has a lot of protection, but the protection is not enforced. So we need to always include our minors in our programs. In terms of harm reduction, we read the drug master plan, but then it does not explicitly include minors when it comes to harm reduction. So we need to take care of our minors. What I have learned from this commission is that I have learned to see people. Today, going to the bus, coming here, a normal day, the same people that are there typically that I did not see. Today I saw them, and they had syringes and they had needles, and they were using, and their syringes were old. These were things that I did not see before coming here. So it has taught me to see the human being and not just see what society has taught me to see. Thank you.
Well, we can call it a day. No. Please.
Yes.
Who's next? Otherwise, I'm going to have to start picking on victims.
Yes.
You can voluntold.
I beg your pardon?
You can voluntold.
Voluntold, yes.
Yes.
Here we go.
Hi everybody. My name is Zintle Cholwana from Sisonke National Movement. What I would say to the Commission is, in terms of sustainability, we need to get government on board. It is a difficult process, but I think we've seen from the presentations there are a lot of examples from Belhaven, just as an example, of how much of an impact can be made if governments as also key players in the work that we do. I think another takeaway would be that in our programs there has to be, and there are examples of this, where there's a lot of flexibility in the programs, where you have aspects like research and evidence-based and collecting those numbers, which is great, but then we also need to have the humanity in it. So a simple thing of qualitative, quantitative. We have those numbers are useful, but we need to have stories behind them in order to get a more holistic picture. So yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I noticed that we don't have very many brave men. So are there any men who want to come and say anything? All right, come on.
He's right behind you. Okay,
Somebody.
we will start picking people.
Please, I don't. There we got somebody. You can come queue. We can queue, people. We can queue.
Good morning, everyone here. And yes, I want to represent most of the young people. Number one, my name is Eric Dondolo. I'm representative of Sisonke, the National Sex Workers Movement. I stand with many caps on my head today, standing before you as a young sex worker, as a young person. But one of the things I want to tell the Commission with regards to substance abuse, in essence, it's drugs. I've learned a lot in this 4 days, but then what I'm taking home with me today is that beyond substance abuse, there is a person who doesn't only is reliant, but also we have our rec users. Let us take into context that we are saving lives by just making small little changes. It is within ourselves to change our mindsets on the expression of what is drugs, for example. And there are people who are not only reliant, but then are responsible users out there, and they can help us. And we just need to now target our thinking, target who we speak to, and target that they are also young people, and that they are there and are willing to help. So after this, I am the one young person that has been touched from this conference, and I will be preaching the gospel. Thank you.
Anybody else who would like to contribute? Yes.
Hi everybody, so my name is Etienne and I'm a social anthropologist. I've been working in the cannabis policy space in South Africa for at least 3 years now, and building on what he just said, the stories that I've heard in this space are just amazing. And to the commissioner, I suppose I would say, I've read the literature, and what I get from that, and studying the history as well, is that of drug prohibition is, get out of your office, get onto the ground, and start exposing yourself to these stories. Listen to these stories, because that is, ultimately what drug policy is supposed to be formulated on. The evidence is there. You just need to go out and actually engage with it. What I've learned from, I guess what I'll take away from this Africa Policy Week is, it's good to see that there's a whole bunch of people working in this space, doing what you do, and I would just like to engage more with it and actually become more of a part of contributing to drug policy and making it more human rights based.
Thank you.
My name is Bernice. I represent the old people. I think what I'll tell the Commission is that Africa needs to fund its government, harm reduction program. Africa needs to take care of its people. We are not going to wait for foreign aid anymore. It's time that we took care of our own shit. Thank you. What I take from here is young people are coming on board. We need to start programming around young people in schools. And that means that we have to incorporate a lot of prevention, the family, the holistic nature. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanya Marumbwa, but on the street I'm called Skara. I am a drug user. I work with Zimbabwe people who use drugs, Simpod. This is my first time here, but what I've learned in this room and the kind of work that I'm doing in my country and the engagements we're having with the government on DCRIM, and we're trying to start something on DCRIM. So the last time I had a conversation with someone from the Criminal Investigation Department, the CID department, the drugs department, they're like, you can't come and tell us about harm reduction. It sounds like it's westernized and stuff, but can you at least relate to the African context? So being here, Africa Drug Policy Week, getting to learn what other countries are doing. I can take this back home and I'll tell them, here's the plate you guys are asking for. You ask for comparisons, then here's a bunch of comparisons. And I've also made a few friends who can also get on hybrid meetings. So, is the time up? I talk a lot, guys, so if it's, please just click, because I'll be in there. So, at least we can now work together. Zimpod is fairly new, but harm reduction is something that is on the Presidential Interministerial Task Force on Drugs and Substance Use in our country. But if you look at the pamphlet they have that they're distributing for harm reduction, it's pathetic. But then after being here, I've learned so much, and they're willing to listen, some of them. It's just that they have this vile way of describing us, people who use drugs. Thank you.
Ah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Melissa Lautergan from TBHIV Care. I'm the communications coordinator for PWID. So initially when I saw those stickers and the gentleman came passing, he's like, do you want one? And I was like, yes, I'll have one. I thought I'm getting a prize or something. And the minute they mentioned, you have to come up and talk, and I'm like, oh no. Let me, just gain up the courage. So basically what I want to say is that Charity this morning spoke about a youth member that says young people are not problems to be solved, but are problem solvers. And I believe it's about empowering those, those are our future generations. That's where it starts. Also, the president had mentioned something. I just want to share the quote as well. Excuse me. So drugs have destroyed many lives, but wrong government policies have destroyed many more. And RIP's resurrection is possible, and we can all do it together. Thank you.
Should I wrap up?
We can wrap that up.
Yeah?
Thank you, everybody. Go ahead.
All right, so thank you so much. And I think one of the things that we forget in Africa is that climate change is affecting all of us. And that's an element that we tend to forget within the drug policy space, especially in Africa. And so we need to start acknowledging the impacts that the drug prohibition has on our environment. And so that's another thing to mention to the Commission, that African countries need to start looking at the impact of drug policies and prohibition on our environment. Because like Melissa said, the young people are our future. And now if we're not creating or we're not doing enough to address the environmental impacts, we're not going to leave a very good and healthy environment for our young people. And also looking at our cultural practices in Africa, we are, I think, a very diverse continent, and there's so many different cultures within our different countries, and we need to start considering how to have indigenous harm reduction services within our respective countries. So that's the end of that session. Thank you so much. I'll hand over to Sean.
Thank you. So just the order of events now for this little bit. We're going to do a couple of thank yous, and then I'm going to invite Matuto Ntumi from the National Department for Social Development to come up and say a few words. And then when she's done, then I'm going to wrap things up with my last words. And the reason why I do it that way, and I make no bones about it, is because I always find it awkward when you build up to a crescendo, to final end, and then you go, and just a final word from this one, and thank you to this one, and thank you to that one. So when I finish, right at the end, and you'll know when it is, you clap. You go wild, and you leave the room, and I feel like a rock star. Okay. So as not to take anything away from that, I'm going to now fumble with my phone, and because I've just closed, I realized I closed exactly one of the things that I needed to keep open. So I'll just entertain you mildly while I look for it. I have threatened Charity that I will actually have a new career as a comedian one day, because she laughs at me on the phone, but for the wrong reasons. Okay, so firstly, I would like to thank a lot of people, all of you, for being here. 2 weeks out, I didn't think anybody would be here. I would very much like to thank Jabu from SANEC, who put up with me harassing her for money. I would like to thank Yolan for working miracles, including within TBHIV Care, because by the time I needed to get money paid across to Sanput to pay for things, a few days beforehand, she'd already organized all of that. She'd spoken to all the people who I didn't know existed within the organization where I work. So really organized, and I appreciate that, and to Mohammed as well, and all the people from SANEC, from NACOSA, sorry, but also to the people from SANEC, thank you very much. Through adversity, mild adversity, me throwing my toys out the cot, really, we've formed much stronger working relationships. And again, I've seen that there are people, and they've seen that I'm people as well. So that's been a very valuable thing for me, a very valuable process. Gunnar, thank you so much for your efforts at UNODC to constantly keep us in mind. Jason, your legacy lives on, you know. Nani from the Central Drug Authority, thank you for being here. It's really amazing to have you here, just truly amazing to have you here. And I'm sorry, I'm going to murder your name, Mr. Lefoka Kusameng. I'm sorry that I'm pronouncing it totally incorrectly because I can't actually see down here. But thank you very much for being here and representing the AU. Again, it's having auspicious representation from organizations such as the AU that makes these things credible, actually, at the end of the day. So, yeah, that was great. HRI, IDPC, our partners in crime, we go forward. I remember going to the very first Harm Reduction International Conference in Malaysia, and it was like coming home to a family. It really was. And the friendships, Ido was there as well. That was the time that he won those awards. The people that I met there have been cemented in my heart, I must be honest. I remember meeting Lee Hurtle over the world's largest buffet. They had, I think, 17 different kinds of bread that you could eat. quite amazing. To everybody who's traveled, and I've forgotten a lot of people off my list so far, a couple that I'll come back to in a moment. But to everybody who's traveled so far to be here, to people who've risked the taxi wars in Cape Town to be here, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And hopefully it was worthwhile for you. Of course, H Factor, who pulled this thing together, who pre-funded a lot of it because their client was slow in paying them, which is amazing, you know, that they just went ahead on faith and did it. We appreciate that. It's not the way to do business, but we appreciate it. The people at Sandput, who've been tremendously supportive as well. To the drug reporter team who've been out here training people, fantastic. Also a lifelong dream of mine to have that happen. Lifelong, no, it wasn't. It's been a dream since I met them in KL, Kuala Lumpur. To see Moses here, and it would have been wonderful to have had Colin here, our comrade who was murdered, so I'm sorry about that. Julie. What more do I need to say? The best example of how Julie's acted ever since we started working together 13 years ago was in yesterday's meeting where she'd been banging on the hotel room door. Sean, are you awake? Why? Where am I supposed to be? Downstairs, sort of 20 minutes ago. So I rushed in downstairs and said, I'm terribly sorry, I slept through 3 alarms. And they all looked, and Julie going, actually, I told them you were in a very important meeting. I should have guessed. Loyalty is your thing, and covering. But enabling, really, jeez. So thank you very much. To people not here from TBH Care who've actually given me the freedom to act as if I don't even work for them, I appreciate that. To Helen Sava, who, despite the anti-American sentiment, ensured that we could access CDC funding for this, I really appreciate it as well. To everybody here, and I'm forgetting people, I know I'm forgetting people, and I'm really sorry that I'm forgetting you. COSUP, the city of Tshwane, the presence here. How can anybody not fund COSUP from now onwards? It's like, I've been talking COSUP internationally for years. Yes, it sort of was a little bit of my baby in the beginning, and I worked with them, but it's all them now, and I just keep telling people, this is the way to go for municipalities. all the time. I'm shoving it down their throats. Maybe I should relax a little bit and maybe they'll actually listen. But now people are listening. Okay. So those are the basic thanks. I'm not, and yeah, if I've forgotten you, I'm sorry. The sound team and all the rest, everybody, thank you. All protocols observed, all thanks observed as well. So I'm going to hand over to Matuto, who, and I just want to say the Deputy Minister, since 2016, when I first met her in Vienna, has been incredibly supportive, even to the point of doing herself political harm. She's been supportive. And behind every good politician is a good technical advisor. Okay? And that's Matuto. 11 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm disturbing her, and she's answering her phone. So thank you for that. And I'd like to just hand over to you for a few words, and once she's finished, then I will go into that last little bit that I want to say, my message. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, Charity. Sean, I must correct something, and thank you for not telling me how much long I have to speak. I'm no longer Matuto Mutumi. There's a family that will come knocking at my door, asking for their cows. I know my email still says Matuto Mutumi, but it's Matuto Mudibedi. My email, the department is taking forever to change my email address. So when people still they see Matuto Mutumi. But it's okay. We'll try and explain. We've eaten all the cows, by the way. It's not your fault. But thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm going to try and speak like my boss speaks. She's very passionate about harm reduction. But first, I want to congratulate Sanput, Sean, and the team, and everybody else who has been part of putting together this auspicious event. It's one of the forums we need in this country. It's one of the forums we need to devolve further down into our local communities. And I keep spending hours on the phone with Sean about how we need to do that. But thank you very much. You deserve a big round of applause for pulling all this together. I know it's been a long walk to get here. It hasn't been an easy one. But also I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Without the expertise that is in this room, without the knowledge base that is in this room, without the experiences in this room, and without the lack of experience that is in this room, this occasion would not have been as successful as I think it has been. Since I've started, since I came to the APW, there's been a lot of talk about funding. And even this morning, I attended a session about financing. And we had very good inputs. Speakers gave a lot of insight. I was still left with a question, what are we funding? Not that the speakers didn't say. But my question stems from the position that there's an assumption that we all know what harm reduction is, at least in South Africa. But the painful reality is that even in the very department where I am in, that should be spearheading harm reduction, there is no common understanding or position on harm reduction. You invite me to speak on harm reduction, I talk to you about the national security. and every other thing up under the sun and the sky. But I have a mandate as stipulated in the National Drug Master Plan as the Department of Social Development to champion harm reduction, but you are sitting there with an assumption that I know what it is that I must champion. So we are sitting in here as the converted, explaining to ourselves and each other what harm reduction is. And the people that you need to champion it out there still don't know. As far as they know, you start talking about harm reduction, they are thinking OST and NSP, and they're thinking, oh, we are giving people needles to java themselves, and you know that and that and that. But the full spectrum of harm reduction is not understood. And I'm going to give you a scenario. It will mean different things to different sectors. And what should it mean to us as social development? I'm going to try and break this elephant down into smaller pieces. As much as we are the custodian of the National Drug Master Plan with the CDA coordinating all efforts, to us, if the CDA is to call social development and say, present your harm reduction program to us. A lot of people don't understand that social development is actually the center that should hold communities together. We ourselves as the departments also don't know that. We have a unit in the department that focuses on HIV programs. And included in that are PWITs. But we have a unit in the department that focuses on substance abuse, and the two don't talk together. This one budgets for their program away from this one, but we somewhere along the line are targeting the same key population. And when I start speaking from the HIV perspective, this one from substance abuse tells me, Anna, you are stepping into my terrain, stay away. But we are talking about resource allocation. So the both of us are going to go and grapple for the small piece of cake instead of coordinating our efforts to make sure that we can make this rent go a mile longer. For us as social development, harm reduction goes beyond OST and NSP. It goes to sustainable livelihoods, which is what we are about as social development. We can't talk about OST to people who are hungry. In the past, we used to talk about ARVs, hoping that we give people ARVs as Department of Health, but these people are hungry. They are going to sell the ARVs to buy food. So what are you actually doing? For us, it means ensuring sustainable livelihood. We talk about people who live and work on the streets. Yesterday, Stacy made a very good presentation about the project in Langeban. And as she was standing here and talking about the need, I stood at the end of the session, I said to her, this is what we are going to do. In September, the Deputy Minister will be rolling out a fetal alcohol syndrome campaign. We are coming to you. But not only are we coming to you to dialogue, we are bringing different units in the department who are going to make sure that there's cooperatives of women arising from that. And the National Development Agency, which is an agency like the CDA, must incubate these cooperatives of women to make sure that they are sustainable. There's a skill in Langeberg, which is in agriculture. Let's leverage on this skill and make sure that as much as we are providing a health service, we need to go beyond that and make sure that they can sustain themselves. We will only be able to help them take a few steps up to a point. But we need to make sure that when we talk about empowering women and reducing gender-based violence, we can leave them standing on their own and being able to have a voice for themselves. But they're not going to be able to do that when we take their children. That's why they don't come to our treatment centers. For us, it means once we've established these small structures, the NDA would fund them and incubate them for a period of time that's stipulated. You bring other departments so that the departments can then make sure that where it is their jurisdiction, they step in and they can run with it. And I stood outside and I said to Charity, I'm going to call community mobilization, I'm going to call sustainable development, I'm going to call this one, and I called all of them. And I said, I'm going to convince my boss that we must go to Langeban, because that's a case study I want us to zoom in on and show that as social development, what's the full spectrum of harm reduction for us? It will not be the same for Department of Health. It will not be the same for justice. But what are we talking about when we say we are talking about harm reduction is key and critical to all of us sitting in this room, and even as we go out of this room. It's this big elephant, taking it in small chunks that are chewable for each and every one of us. There's a speaker who spoke about the National Drug Master Plan and the minors. It's a pity UNICEF is not here. Hopefully, sometime next year, Guna, we will have a booklet that speaks to children. And the language must be a harm reduction language. So we need to capacitate the CDA. It's not properly structured, but with the necessary resources, the technical and the all types of resources that exist currently, there is nothing that the CDA cannot achieve as a coordinating structure. They may not have chief, but there's a lot that they can do with the relevant support from all the structures that exist on the ground. Our biggest challenge is to make sure that all the many interventions that we have already underway are properly coordinated and can be tracked. I left a challenge to colleagues at COSA, and I said, I would like you to invite 2 people in the Department of Social Development at National. Send a specific invitation to them to come and look at what it is that you are doing. And I was happy when I saw the video that was played by Hendrik earlier on. We took one of them to Belhaven when the Deputy Minister was launching it, but I think it still hasn't held. Yeah, it still hasn't held. But devolving all this to municipalities remains key in my closing. I know I took long. In municipalities, the voice of people who use and inject drugs is not there. It's not there. There are IDP sessions. We need to capacitate local drug action committees to be able to attend those forums and speak. And say, in the IDP of this municipality, we would like to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The mayors will not add that because they don't know what it is. But it is people or the sector that must make sure that in the IDPs, that is there because the IDPs are budgeted for. It is the sector that must make sure that when the local municipality has an HIV event, it is not narrow-focused. It is comprehensive. But it is for all of us to understand that harm reduction is not a sideshow. Let's all begin there. Harm reduction is a mandate within the National Drug Master Plan that's given to everybody in this country, not just the CDA or social development. So the departmental plans that each department is supposed to submit to the CDA must have a component. It must include and it must be budgeted for. That way, we will ask less and less, how do we finance? Because we would have made sure that in all that we do, harm reduction is not a sideshow. It is integrated, just like we integrated HIV and GBV and placed GBV in Premier's offices. Let's make sure that the very GBV agendas in Premier's offices and the women's programs in Premier's offices include a component of harm reduction, and we are specific for which key populations. Sean, I could take forever. The last one. Where are the people with the money? I don't see the private sector in this space. Maybe they are there, I didn't get a chance to interact with them. But where are the people with the money? As activists, we must go to those doors and knock on those doors and remind them that you can't hide. We are all in this together. Okay, they can choose a component. I will fund a cooperative that will sustain people. It's fine. It's okay, we want your money. You can bring it. But we need to bring everybody in this space so we can walk this journey together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matuto. And we're on the same page there. You know, it's sad when we see people getting richer and richer and others getting poorer and poorer. And at the end of the day, actually, I want you to imagine the communities that many of us live in or have lived in, or many of you live in and have lived in, or we find the most marginalized people in. And imagine that community and just take all the drugs out of it. And what do you have? You've still got the problems. We're not living with a drug problem. We're living with a societal problem, a whole of society problem. And until we start seeing it like that, until we start realizing that it's actually not our personal choice that we decided not to take drugs, but it's actually a set of circumstances that it was unavoidable for us not to take drugs, just as it is unavoidable for them, for unavoidable for us to take drugs, or them unavoidable not to take drugs. Basically what I'm saying is almost a predestiny there. You cannot say, oh, I didn't do it, therefore they shouldn't do it. It doesn't work like that. It's small things, small differences that come from lots of different aspects of our experience that determine which path we walk. And frankly, if we look at the rest of the world, I think that people who use drugs do a lot less damage than bankers. Yes. Seriously. So we need to really stop judging. And honestly, people who use drugs are some of the most ingenious people that I've ever met, and most industrious people I've ever met. 40 billion rand a year from bin pickers to the economy. That's a huge amount of money, despite being maligned every single day. Okay, that wasn't part of my speech, but anyway. So, is this on now? The screen, the presentation. I'm just waiting for the slides to come up quickly. All right, what next? Okay. Charity spoke a bit about the CESCR. We've learned a bit about what we learned here and what we had to share. Okay. Now, I went through all the sessions, and I ran them through ChatGPT, some AI, looking for common themes. All right, and it came up with the term, "Please free me, free me." No, it didn't. This is the one thing that came out clearly. Prohibition-focused drug policy remains one of the fundamental barriers we must remove before achieving an open, just, and equitable society in South Africa, Africa, and internationally. We will not have a free society while we are incarcerating people. Now, Matuta said we've got a lot of people with the same ideas in the room. We're singing to the choir. I'm going to respectfully disagree with a little bit with that, because if I had made this statement in 2017 or 2016, I would have been not booed because people are too polite for that, but certainly people would have been talking behind the scenes and saying that I was mad. I've been doing this for 13 years, and it's only recently that some people have said, maybe he's talking a little bit of sense some of the time. And I'm not saying that I was super prescient and that, just that my circumstances allowed me to be exposed to new ways of thinking about it, and I understand fully that people come up with the ideas because they are faced with really difficult situations. And so with a lot of thought, I came up with this vision that I had, which is shared with Sandput and other organizations. But I look forward to a world where all people are empowered and are able to, most of the time, because we never can make good decisions all the time, make conscious, autonomous, well-informed decisions about their bodies, including how and when to use or not use drugs without being criminalized, stigmatized, or excluded. Now, this also ties into what's going on in Uganda at the moment, okay, where their drug prevention strategy says that drugs cause the crime of defilement, which is a blatant attack on the LGBTQI community. The next thing is a drug policy landscape that does not perpetuate the oppression, marginalization, and economic exclusion of people, including those who use drugs. And the response to drug use, lifestyles, and identity does not increase the harm, restrict people's access to education, economic opportunities, services, and medications, or restrict their autonomy. That, to me, would be the perfect world. And the irony of it is, far less people would use drugs dependently in that world. Because it's only when people have no other thing to turn to that they start turning to drugs in a dependent way. That's the world I look forward to. So I was asked by Colleen, and I shared this with her earlier, how's this thing going? And we've got some principles here. And if you remember, if you were here at the previous drug policy weeks, we said we need to talk about drugs. So we need to talk about the things we don't want to talk about. We need to know the people we don't want to know about. You said, somebody shared here about how they saw people for the first time. That's an incredibly powerful thing, to see somebody truly for what they are and not react in a way that humiliates them. Just to see them as another human being, no matter what's going on. We need to hear what we prefer not to hear. And what we try to do is we try to create a safe space for people to talk to people they would not, otherwise not talk to, about the things they wouldn't otherwise talk about. And I'm quite happy, because in these conversations we get to understand what we don't know and who we don't know. And I specifically use the word conversations. These are not debates. They are not arguments. They are conversations. Nobody's trying to prove a point. And I think we've kind of achieved that. Because when we hear the chairperson of the Central Drug Authority talking about decriminalization, which wouldn't have happened before, and that's not a reflection on your position before, it's a position of the Central Drug Authority's position before, that's encouraging. When I see a group of cannabis activists sitting downstairs talking to police from the narcotics division and having good, robust conversations, I'm really encouraged. But when I see a drug user sitting down and talking to the former president, I know the world is changing. I'm sorry. I know that we are eventually seeing the truth, that people who use drugs You can just put a full stop after the word people, because that's who they are. They are just people. And that goes for sex workers. It goes for every person here. We are, after all, just people. Fallibly human, but humanly lovable. We need compassion. And that's what I want to say to you all. When in doubt, when you are fighting a fight, stop fighting. Sit down and listen, talk, and understand we are all human. And all of us are just looking to live a life that's a little bit better. Make the difference in somebody's life, please. Thank you very much.